Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
In the 90s, we were just teeny tykes. We liked our movies and our bikes. We wanted to be DJs, but we were just teeny gals. So we went off to college and we remained as pals. 20 years later, we're still watching flicks and we're bringing you the feeling bit by bit. Sweetie and Sweetie are here to say it's the Large Marge Santa's podcast. Hey.
I trust that's not the brain hormone that creature's drinking. Good boy. Nice boy. There's a good creature. Now, let's talk this over. I can get you diseases. You'd like that, wouldn't you?
I wanna talk a little bit about what's going on in this room, because I think there are some fascinating ramifications here for the future. When you introduce genetic material of research quality to a life form such as ours, which is possessed of a sort of, I hesitate to use the word, atavism, but let us say a highly aggressive nature. For example, that fellow over near the, I believe that's a common bat of the order Chiroptera, the only mammals, I might add, capable of true flight.
Hey guys, welcome to the Large Marge Tennis Podcast, your favorite podcast where two sweetie sisters talk about movies that shaped their childhood. I'm Sweetie.
And I'm Sweetie.
And today we did. I always love that like slow start after like the initial
Building
intro.
Building it up.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. After you listen to 80 episodes that we have, you're like, wow, this is like super patterned. Guys, wait for it. Third movie in September sequels. We are rolling along here.
Yep. Rolling with the sequels. Rolling with the sequels.
I'm so proud of us. We really have been
Pretty
like on top of it.
Pretty proud.
Don't really have lives, so we're able to watch like a lot of movies.
You have a life. I don't.
Yeah.
But
I love movies.
so what did we watch tonight?
So today we did Gremlins 2.
Dun, 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 dun. Gremlins 2. Ooh, ooh. Gremlins are back coming for you. Ooh, ooh.
So, quick story about Gremlins 2. So, if you recall, we did our Gremlins 1, aka Gremlins, in December because we thought of it.
Christmas.
Yeah, it's now for us, hopefully, and I wanted to talk to you about this. A Christmas movie, which I think will be a fun tradition, like that and Die Hard, to do these like kind of like offbeat Christmas movies instead of like, you know, I mean, I love Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life and all that jazz, but whatever. But it'd be kind of cool to have like ones that are like set in Christmas, but like kind of cool movies.
Totally. I'm in.
So we did it in December. So really, first time we had seen it, right? I mean, we had seen
a
some
couple,
clips,
yeah.
but we loved it. We were like, this movie is rad. One of our favorite guys, Chris Columbus, wrote it. Joe Dante, who we also now love, directed. So we were just like all on board. And that's a really good podcast. So like totally listen. Our favorite being Billy's mother. Like, what up?
That
Hero.
bitch. Love that bitch.
But we really didn't even know that movie existed. I mean, we did, but had never seen it. Because we grew up on Gremlins 2. The new batch.
Like all awesome kids that grew up in the 90s, I don't remember where we first saw this. I'm assuming on television.
It's got to be TV.
And I just remember always watching it, and I thought it was just the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And when you're little, I think the Gremlins are a big appeal for you because they say silly things, and okay, so I remember like the specific part that I thought was like the funniest part in the whole fucking movie.
Okay.
And I like turned bright red when it happened in the movie tonight, and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a loser. So when I was little, at the end, I loved the part where the Gremlins are like in like a cha-cha-cha line, and they're like, 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, 3, 4, cha-cha-cha. Like, I don't know why I thought that was hilarious.
Yep.
I used to recreate it.
Oh, yeah.
But like, it's stuff like that kids love. And so that's why I'm sure we loved this movie.
It's like they made it for the kids. This one.
Yes.
Right? Like not, It was like scary, but like not really. The things were gross, but it was just so like comical and slapstick and silly to the point where I think like exactly like kids are drawn to it. You're just like, oh my god, these guys are so funny. Look at these little monsters with their funny little voices, doing funny little things and wearing funny little clothes. I mean, it's like made for children essentially. Yeah, so we watched it a lot. 1990 it was out, so yeah, I mean we would have been in like right that 6, 7, 8 year old age range where you're like able to watch these movies, because I think it was rated PG-13, but like our parents think it was shit, so we could watch whatever we want.
I feel like it could have been PG. I feel like there wasn't anything in there that was like.
No, but there's all like scratching and blood and like that
one
kind
scratching
of stuff.
blood scene, which sweetie is like the end of the world for you. You're like, won't stop talking about it. Oh, brother. But yeah, I mean, it's not a great movie.
PG-13, what up?
Okay, PG-13. But yeah, it's a pretty terrible movie, and I recognize
pretty bad, guys.
I
It's
recognize
pretty
that
bad.
now, but I still think it's funny.
This is one like for sure. I'm not really going to defend this as being like a great film. It's really fun.
Yeah, I
Super fun.
still think it's hilarious.
I was a little bored. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm like, when are the Gremlins come out? Because this shit is getting boring. Like in the office and stuff.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting was so the first one is it took place in 1984, so it's like heyday 1980 film. It is such a 1980s film. I mean, you put that in a time capsule if you want to like tell people what the 1980s were like in the United States, right? This movie is clearly so 90s, of that opulent 90s, like we don't have any problems, the economy is good, like cheesy bullshit.
Yep.
That like is the 90s, which is cool in itself, right?
Totally. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we'll talk about some trademark 90s things in a bit. But for now, I think we should probs remind folks what the movie's about, because the plot is pretty deep, It's
wild.
It's going to go places.
You're
so
wild.
Get ready.
You're wild.
So, I think
It's time for the Sweetie Synopsis. Yeah, Sweetie. Why?
she's back
Could not stick that in there.
with her gizmo impression. So soothing, like puts me to sleep. The gizmo lullaby. Billy Peltzer and girlfriend, fiance, Kate, whoever.
No last name.
She does have a last name. I saw in the credits, but I don't care what it is. Because
Kate,
they don't
Honey.
care.
He only
so
calls
we
her
don't
Honey,
care.
so
Yeah.
I don't even know how she has last first name.
It's true. He called her Kate like one time.
Yep.
And Katie, which I was like, is she a Katie? I don't think so. Anywho, they have moved to New York City to make it big. It's the big time. They have both gotten jobs at like the biggest automated building in New York City, which is the Clamp superbuilding, blah blah blah, whatever. So this guy Clamp,
It's like the craziest name ever. Oh my god! Can I do my thing before?
What?
The Clamp.
Oh.
The Clamp. Sorry, I just think that's a funny name.
it's just
Mr. Clamp.
okay. I don't know. I'm sure people have that as a last name.
Do
I don't think
they?
we should knock it.
Jeez.
Anyways,
bad for
so Kate is a tour guide, whoopity-doo, and Billy is an architect or designer,
Yeah.
an artist, designer, yeah. So they're kind of sad. They've been in the city for a while. They still have the same job. And I'm like, listen, this is real
Wait.
life, kids.
Question for you.
Oh.
So while this movie takes place in 1990, is like made in 1990 and like supposedly set in 1990. Are you supposed to think it's literally 6 years after the incident of the first Gremlins? Because the way they talk about it,
Seems
it
like it was
doesn't.
recent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Futterman's like not over that shit, and it's been 6 years. Like, so don't you feel like
Yeah.
they were like they tried to cheat that a little bit and
Well-
and kind of make you think it was like kind of closer than, and even how like because it feels like because they were in college. Wait, what were the kids? What was the kids' deal? Oh yeah, they're working at the bank. They were post high school.
Kate was a
and-
bartender at that bar.
yeah, but at
Did
least
she work at
like
the bank?
post high school, then or they. I don't even think they went to college.
They
or
weren't even
something.
dating in the first one, right?
Right.
He just knew her.
No, remember because she was like, wasn't she dating the Judge Reinhold guy?
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I don't. We need to.
Yeah.
This is why we have to watch it every Christmas.
I
Because
know.
we need to know these things, man. Anyways,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess. So, anyways, so they're just a little sad. They like are suddenly realizing that being adults sucks,
Well, now they're yuppies too.
and they're yuppies, but not really. I mean, they're pretty poor and like they have these shitty jobs. Kate has to wear this like terrible hat every day and like give people a tour of this building. So. The building is, as I said, a super building. So there's all kinds of crazy technology in this. So we're talking
But like too advanced for this time period.
right. So like this kind of stuff wasn't prevalent really in the 90s. So it did seem like a big deal, but now to us, it's pretty laughable. So there's like video phones. Whoa. ID scanners. Whoa. Shit like that.
Frozen yogurt. Whoa.
Frozen yogurt bar. So this building houses, for instance, like a film studio or like a television studio. They make several different television shows. They have a lab. They have stores. It's basically a mall. And then there's offices.
And maybe even like residences.
A dentist.
I think people live there too.
It's just,
It's
it
everything.
goes on.
It's like a city within a building.
Yeah, it hurts my head. Anyway, so this guy, Clamp, wants to turn Chinatown into like some new development. So to do that, they need to close down that old Chinese guy's antique shop from the first movie who owns Gizmo. And why did they just need him? Was he like the last holdout?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think so.
So they needed him, and then they go and try to get him to sign over it or whatever. And he's like, no, I won't do it. But then the guy's like, did you hear him coughing? Like, he doesn't have long. And of course, it's like 6 weeks later, and he died. And they demolish the building, and Gizmo's still there, and he's like, and runs away. He goes outside, and as luck would have it, 2 scientists from the genetics laboratory at the Clamp building find him and bring him back to the Clamp super building. So that's how Gizmo gets back there. One day, in his cubicle, Billy hears a mailman humming Gizmo's tune. Sweetie? And Billy's like, excuse me, sir, where did you hear that? And he's like, what? Isn't that a Sting song? He's like, no, it's not a Sting song. Where'd you hear it? He's like, someone was whistling it down in the genetics lab. So Billy's like, oh my God, I think they have Gizmo. So he sneaks down there, finds Gizmo, like steals him. What's that called?
Burgles? Not kidding.
Smuggles him out, and then like hides him in his filing cabinet. And is like, stay here all day. I'm going to go to dinner with my boss. Like,
No. Remember,
questionable.
originally he was going to take him home, but then the like drawer kept opening, and so the woman wouldn't look in the drawer. He's like, "Let's go out to dinner," like because she had asked him out, and so he just was like, "Yeah, let's go out to dinner. We got to leave now," because he didn't want her to look in the drawer.
Okay, sure. But, I mean, I still think questionable plan, whatever. So he goes out to dinner with her, and he tells Kate, like, listen, Gizmo's here. We got to bring him home. Go get him. Meanwhile, Gizmo decides that he doesn't want to stay in a filing cabinet for hours. I mean, who does? Can he breathe? I'm
He's
concerned.
like a curious little cat. That one.
So he goes out there, and then this disgruntled janitor comes and tries to fix the water fountain and ends up inadvertently squirting Gizmo with the fountain. So Gizmo gets wet. And as we all know, first rule of Gremlins.
Right,
second rule of Gremlins.
Yeah, let's go over the Gremlin rules again. Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, don't shine.
No lights. No bright lights.
No bright lights.
Sunlight will kill them.
Yep. Number 2,
Don't get them wet.
Number 3, do not feed them after midnight.
Dun dun dun. So those are the rules. So we've got one down already. So of course the little balls fly out of Gizmo's back, the furry versions of the Gremlins, and they come back and they're like causing havoc immediately because they're like assholes.
But they're like the cute little gremlin, like stage,
Fuzzy,
like furry little
yep.
ones that are just like annoying, but can't actually hurt people really.
Yeah,
Right.
they're not too lethal yet. Yeah. They're just causing mayhem. So they go running around this building, find their way to the food court, and unfortunately at this point it's midnight, and the building's still open because apparently it also has a nightclub.
Yeah, that's what Party
It
Central.
just keeps getting better. So Kate
Party
goes
rockers
to
in
the
the
office before
house
that
tonight.
and thinks that she gets Gizmo, but it's one of the crazy gremlins with like the googly eyes who's like insane. So she takes him home. Billy gets home, is like, who is that? That is not Gizmo. We have to go back because he realizes that he must have gotten wet and sprouted the gremlins. So they rush back to the building. It's still open because the nightclub, and it's hopping. I was shocked it was midnight.
I would go
I
into
was like, wow.
I would go into a nightclub in a big giant building with a yogurt stand.
Sure, I guess. Yeah, so the yogurt stand has all the toppings and whatnot. So the gremlins are like hosing the yogurt in their mouths, like eating all the toppings, and it's past midnight. So shit, we broke another rule. So now they go into their pupa stage. Cocoon stage. So they incubate overnight, and they hatch into the really scary gremlins the next morning, which is unfortunately when all the people are back in the building. So complete mayhem. So many gremlins.
I can't.
It's like hurts my head.
Station
Because they just keep getting wet and sprouting more. And unfortunately, when they're at the scary stage and they get wet, they immediately sprout more scary gremlins. It's not like it goes back to the furry stage.
Yeah,
it's like
good
scary
point.
immediately.
Think about that. Whoa.
Yeah, so that's what happens. So there's just gremlins everywhere. So there's all kinds of shenanigans. They need to find a way to kill all the gremlins. So they come up with a plan to speed the clocks ahead.
Yep,
couple
because
hours.
everything is like automated in this big building, so they can change the clocks and trick the gremlins into thinking it's 7 p.m. and it's dark outside, but really it's not. And then they're going to go outside and get fried. And then to further trick them, they put this like curtain over the windows so it looks dark even though it isn't.
And they want them to come into the lobby area. They all want them to like
How do they
amass.
get them to come in the lobby?
Because that's the only way out of the building.
Yeah.
So they knew that as soon as it became nighttime, the gremlins would leave.
Right.
Because they could go outside. So they knew that the only way they can get out is through the lobby.
Right.
So they're all massed in there. And they think it's nighttime, so they're all waiting patiently to like go
How
out.
in the first one did they get them to go to the movie theater to see Snow White?
They just went on their own. They like took over the town and they were like, woo! Yeah.
Really
Hilarious. So they're about to drop the sheet, and unfortunately a storm happens and the sun is away, so they can't. There goes that plan. Yep. Oof, real bad luck. So then earlier in the movie, the gremlins get into the genetics lab and they drink all kinds of the things. One of them drinks like the electric potion thing, whatever, and turns into an electrified version of a gremlin, which later he's like in the in the wires, and then Billy zaps them like into the phone and puts them on hold, so he's like stuck in the phone system. Right. So then they squirt all the gremlins with water in the lobby.
And what was that supposed to do?
So they would get electrocuted. And then, so they're all wet, and then he puts the phone out, and the electrified gremlin shoots out and electrifies all the gremlins and kills them all. So genius. I mean, Billy's pretty dumb, and we'll talk about this, but that was a smart plan, I'll admit. So the gremlins are all dead. Gizmo's safe and sound. They bring Gizmo back home. Everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. So that's really the plot in a condensed version. Obviously, most of the plot is made up of like, what crazy situation will these gremlins create?
Yeah.
I would say.
Right. So I would say gremlin shenanigans, and also all these little character gremlins, which really was something that is new for this film versus the other one where they like kind of had different personalities.
We talked about them.
Yeah.
Remember, we were like, there's a motorcycle gremlin, the flasher,
right.
the one that was like a pimp.
But it's like they expanded on that. And I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but there's like one of the most amazing sketches ever from Key and Peele, and it's this like script doctor sketch that they do. It's like Michael Starr Jackson Jr. or something like that is this guy's name, and it's like he comes in and they're like discussing what they're gonna do for the plot of Gremlins 2. So this like script doctor comes in and he's like I'm a script doctor, like let's jazz this movie up, and then he just is like, let's like one guy's like, what if we had this kind of gremlin, and he's like, that's it, everyone picks their own gremlin. And so they like go around the table and everyone just is like, what about a spider gremlin? And they just like make all these crazy gremlins, and that like is essentially the plot of this movie. The whole, I don't know, 3/4 of the movie is just like, what's the next like gremlin gonna be? Because initially they're in like this genetics lab, and like Sweetie said, drinking all these potions that are like conveniently like altering them into these like weird states. Let's go through all the different ones. Ready?
Hit me.
All right. So obviously the main one, and the one like I loved, and as a kid I was like, that's funny. The smart gremlin, right?
Me too.
So that guy is
my
fucking
fave.
funny. He drinks a brain hormone potion, goes through like a little bit of like a seizure fit, and then finds some glasses, a turtleneck, and a blazer, and then it's like suddenly smart.
He like crumbles to the ground and it's like and then like pops up with glasses and this like cute suit on.
So
It's
okay,
cute.
first of all, stereotype. Just because you wear glasses does not mean you're super smart. Just want to put that forward. I mean, I do, but I don't wear glasses like all the time.
So you're not smart.
No, but I do wear glasses. Anyway, super stereotype, but fucking funny. So that guy is great because he provides like sort of like the what are the gremlins thinking?
He gives voice to the gremlins as they didn't have that before.
Yep.
So
Okay.
it's pretty
My
great.
least favorite one, disgusting. The veggie gremlin. Ugh. Okay.
It's the vegetable medley
It's the-
gremlin.
So for some reason, there's a vegetable. What was that potion
He's
to do?
drinking my vegetable medley.
What did it do?
They were making super tomatoes that they could like breathe.
But
It's
but he was
basically
all the vegetables.
GMO. Well, yeah, because it was a vegetable medley.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So okay, it's so disgusting. So he drinks the vegetable medley, and then first of all, like these tomatoes start popping out of his skin like zits.
Cherry tomatoes.
Ugh. I can't even look at a cherry tomato again. It's like disgusting. And then it's like a pepper, and then his fingers turn into carrots. It's like so gross. So then he like finds his way to the salad bar. Disgusting. And then the worst part is that the gremlins like pull off the tomatoes and olives
An
and
olive.
use
It
them
was an olive.
in a martini. I don't know what is more disgusting, to like see someone pop off something from someone's body and put it in a drink is like the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And rant. Ew, veggie gremlin is the worst.
It's pretty bad.
Anyway,
Go on.
bat gremlin.
Bat
Tell them
gremlin.
the story about bat gremlin.
So, Bat Gremlin takes some bat potion and turns into a bat, and then the smart gremlin also spots some like sunblock potion, which prevents somebody from getting affected by the sun, which is great for gremlins because they can't go out in the sun. So he injects the Bat Gremlin with that and is like, "Fly off into the city, go cause mayhem." So the Bat Gremlin goes out there, flies around, happens to find Murray Futterman right away because the Futtermans are visiting New York City. So I don't just by as luck would have it, the gremlin's like, "Hey, I know that guy."
Oh, they know.
Swoops down there, attacks Murray Futterman. Futterman has the good sense, even though he's been scarred by this. You know, he could have just like crumbled and just like hid in a corner
Oh,
and never
no.
come out, but
He's fierce.
he goes for it and he throws him into cement. The Gremlin flies up to a church roof covered in cement, which is, I would imagine, is pretty hard to do.
Yeah, hard to
It's
fly,
pretty
covered in
heavy.
cement, yeah.
He makes it though, and then turns into like a gargoyle. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
But I will say the worst part of the movie for me by far. So as a kid, I guess kind of now too, but like gross violence of like the skin nature always kind of like creeped me out, right? Like scratches or like stabbing and stuff like that. Slitting throats, like I can't even deal with that. That's probably like my number one fear.
Wow.
But the only thing I really remembered from this movie is the part where Murray. Whoa, way off. Not really though. Murray Futterman gets okay, I don't know why they have to do this. So he's like fighting off the bat gremlin like so well. He's like bah bah and like pinching him and whatever. And like right before he throws him in like right in the path of the cement mixer that's like pouring it into the sidewalk, and then he gets covered in cement. Like a second before, the gremlin like does this giant scratch on his scalp and forehead, and it's like this open gash wound like the whole movie, but it's just like that ripping of skin. Why did they have to do it?
It dries up. It's not like it's a what is that called? Like when you don't need stitches. It's just
Flesh
like
wound?
I don't know. It was like that. It was fine. You were overreacting. I've never seen you
gross.
quite in that
I don't
state.
know. No, but I think it's because like that visceral when you see something as a kid that really bothered you and it like sticks with you.
Well,
you
I
know?
think. Well, this is my theory, and tell me if I'm correct.
All right.
But we heard a story several times when we were children about how a bat got into our great grandmother's house, and then went like on her head and scratched her head.
What?
Grammy
I don't remember
Eva.
This? Yikes.
Yes. So I thought that's maybe where your fear came from.
Maybe I don't even
But
know.
that's just my theory.
That's crazy.
So that's Bat Gremlin.
Yeah, bat gremlin. Spider gremlin.
Spider Gremlin takes
He's
the spider
pretty
thing.
gross.
He's gross. We'll talk about him in my sweetie scary scenes.
Okay. Flasher gremlin.
Flasher Gremlin is back. He doesn't drink a potion. He's just his own character.
Yeah. Well, and this is great because now we have seen the first one. We can tie it together because it's funny on its own, even if you haven't seen the first one. But it's like a little nod to the first one because in the first one, like Kate is like working at a bar. And the Flasher Gremlin flashes her, and it's like it's a pretty funny scene. Like I love that bar scene in that first one. It's so funny. Remember in the first podcast we did, we're like, why does she keep serving them? Get out of there!
Come up.
You're like, she's working for tips. I'm like, they're not tipping her. They're gremlins.
That's not what he said. I was like, they're probably gonna kill her if she doesn't. I don't know.
That's funny. Anyway, so cool to have Flasher Gremlin, Flasher Gremlin back in town. Electric Gremlin.
Electric
as we talked
Gremlin.
about. Phantom of the Opera Gremlin.
He gets splashed with acid on his face and then puts on a Phantom of the Opera like mask.
Yeah. And what we're now calling Trans Gremlin?
Yes. Yes. Well, on that one, you see like a broken potion. We keep saying potion, but they're like, I don't know the proper term because these aren't real things.
Yeah.
They just like invented them, but like whatever. I know there's like chemical. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's crashed at the bottom, and on the front is a picture of like the male symbol and the female symbol, and it's like joined together. So that was my thinking in that it was like a way to like make somebody transsexual.
I mean, it just makes her super feminine, though.
Well, what's the thing where you have a penis and a vagina?
Hermaphrodite.
Hermaphrodite. Maybe that's what it was.
But only because you think gremlins all start out as men, right? Is that why you think that? I mean, she just like amped up sexual because she has like super pouty lips and like big boobs and like this like really like beautiful green hair.
It had both symbols, so I don't know what we're supposed. I'm just assuming that's what we're supposed to take away from that. Yeah. It's just a
interesting.
Thought.
And the only gremlin that doesn't die.
Yes, which could have done for Gremlins 3, but guess not. Anyone else?
Any other? I mean, those are the ones I listed. I might have like stopped counting. I mean, there's a lot of like little tiny ones.
There's a lot of like, I mean, Stripe comes back. He was like the main villain from the first one. Not a huge role in this one because, like we said, there's so many freaking gremlins that you can't really keep track of like who's who anymore. The googly eye one, and then like the one with the big lips that I hate that looks like a fish. It's like fish mouth.
I hate the like dummy one.
The googly eyes.
Yeah, googly eyed, or one that like almost looks like a troll face. You know what I'm talking about?
That's not the googly one, or it is?
No, it's like he's always with the googly one.
That's the big lips one. I think.
Well, because I feel like there's like these the like original kind of ones that they kind of take from the first movie, and those are the ones that like terrorize Gizmo.
Yeah,
right. Like Stripe, like you said.
Yeah, I think it's like his brother, like original. I don't know. It's confusing
because I think it's the ones that come from him are always those couple.
Are always the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then all the other ones come from
them. So those are like their children.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
It's really confusing. When you're like a tree or like a chart, like documenting like where the gremlins came from.
Right.
But whatever. Yeah. So those are probably the biggest, the most recognizable, whatever, gremlin.
Oh, dentist gremlin.
Types. Well, that was the googly-eyed one.
Oh.
He was just wearing a dentist costume. He didn't take like a dentist potion.
Secretary gremlin?
He just killed the secretary and wanted to be a secretary. Okay. So those ones are like just like playing gremlins playing a part. Yeah, so like same sort of thing. But yeah. So those are the gremlin types. So throughout the movie, and the thing that I remembered very well as a kid was that this movie is chock full of movie references. And I didn't get a lot of them when I was little. I'd say like 75%. I probably didn't understand. And I asked my dad about a couple of them because I didn't know like what it was supposed to be fun, like what was funny about the scene, and he would tell me, and that's how I found out a lot of these famous movies. That's how I found out about them when I was little. So, I mean, this one I knew about was this Dracula element. Mm-hmm. So there's a number of Dracula references, but the most direct one obviously is Fred, the vampire horror host that hosts like a show with horror movies. So that's obviously he's wearing a Dracula costume. But then it goes one step further, and this is symbolic of the entire Gremlins franchise, I would say, is that it's so self-referential and like meta. So it goes one step further than that and casts Christopher Lee in a crucial role in this movie, who plays the classic Dracula in the Universal Dracula movies. And so he's like the lab scientist guy. When the bat gremlin turns into a bat, they play like the Dracula music, and Christopher Lee like looks at him like, ooh, and it's like, whoa, Dracula, looking at Dracula. It's pretty crazy. So that was cool.
Was it some sort of like scene, famous movie thing when he like Christopher Lee comes out of the office with that pod?
Well, I just thought of it as like a nod to like the pod people and like Invasion of the
Body
Snatchers. No, Kevin, what's his face was? I don't think he was, but he could. I haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah, I think maybe Invasion of the Pod people. Just That's what I thought of.
Okay.
And then so the one that I remember the most, and that I asked my dad specifically about, is the dentist scene where Billy's in the dentist chair. He's been knocked out by the googly-eyed gremlin, and the gremlin comes with the drill, and he's like, "Is it safe? Is it safe?" And I was like, "Dad, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand it, because like obviously if you're a kid, you're like, I have no idea what this scene is about. Like, what the fuck?" And my dad was like, "Oh, it's from Marathon Man." So I always made it a point to like see that movie when I was older, and I finally did. And it's pretty fucking boring. But that scene is iconic, and it's that
All right.
scene.
I just want to do the thing whenever you bring up this, because I have not seen that movie, but you have told me about this, about Marathon Man, and I know what it is.
Yes.
But this is what I always remember. I always do this game. Okay. So, because I'm kind of aware. Okay, this is how I roll, right? So I'm like aware of many things. This is why I'm good at trivia. Like I'm aware of many things, even though I have never seen them. So I know about them. I know a lot about them, but I've never actually seen the thing that it is, right? Okay. So, right. So you're like Marathon Man. That's the movie with Dustin Hoffman?
Yep.
Okay. And loosely the plot is...
His brother gets like murdered, and then the killers are like after Dustin Hoffman. I forget why. They think he's involved. And then there's like this Nazi dentist.
It's a Nazi
And,
dentist.
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
There's like diamonds, and they're like in the Jewish name. It's confusing.
Okay. So whenever I bring this up, I'm like, okay, so that's Marathon Man. And then I'm like, what's the Running Man? And then you're like, okay, so that's the movie where it's like in the future, and it's like a game show, and one person is picked, and the guy basically is being chased and like hunted down
The
to
Arnold
kill.
Schwarzenegger one.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is in that, and it's actually a Stephen King story under a pen name that he wrote like for a couple books he wrote under to like make sure he still had cred and it wasn't just his name selling books. Good book. I have read. Very awesome. Total page turner. And then I would always like running. What about Blade Runner? Which I finally saw a couple weeks ago in advance of Blade Runner 2049 or whatever that's coming out in a couple weeks. Very cool.
did it. So now you know.
Now I'm
you're
like, I'm
halfway
almost done. I'm almost done. So I really just need to see Marathon Man and like complete this triangle. I mean, I'll see Running Man too, but I know more about that because I read the book. But like, I'm feeling good about it.
Cool.
I'm feeling much better.
Cool.
So yeah.
So those were like the big ones, and obviously there's a bunch of other movie references. There's a Wizard of Oz one at the end, and some other. There's a Batman reference, all kinds of things. So the let's talk a little bit about this like meta gremlin thing. So obviously it happened in the first one. The second one pushes it so much further to the point.
Wait, what was the meta gremlin of the first one?
They were like. I think I used that term incorrectly in the first podcast. Maybe just like self-referential, but like they're all like making fun of like themselves, or like just that they knew like pop culture references as gremlins,
Yep.
even though they like were just really born.
Exactly.
Like, how do they know all this stuff? How do they know what a flasher is? Like stuff like that. But this movie is just so there's all these scenes. There's a couple scenes. And it's like a Spaceballs thing, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, this is the movie we're watching, and the people in this movie are watching this movie, kind of.
Right.
So they're like, there's a scene where Leonard Maltin is giving his like famously like bad review of the movie Gremlins.
The real
And it's
review
really
he
Leonard
gave.
Maltin.
And
Yeah, and
the
it's
real
the
review
real
he
review.
gave of Gremlins in
He's like,
1984.
this is terrible. If I wanted to see Gremlins 2, I would have watched the first one. I don't get it.
No, I'd rather would have a root
yeah.
canal for 2 hours and watch this movie.
And then the Gremlins attack him, and he's like, "Oh, so like good sport, Leonard Maltin." I just want to say that first of all, good sport.
And then I read in the trivia that like when he had to review this movie, it was like kind of controversial because everyone was like, "Wait a second, like you're in this, like total meta." You're like, "What?"
Silly. So there's that, and then there's another scene where the Gremlins. It looks like the Gremlins like interrupt the film. So you like there's like that cigarette burn thing, and then like the film goes away, and then you just see like two shadows of Gremlins, and then they do these funny shadow puppets.
Oh my god, that's so funny. The Abe Lincoln one like got me.
And then they put like a porno film on instead, and then like a mom runs out of the movie theater and is like, "This is worse than the first one." So you're like, they were watching Gremlins 2? I don't know. It hurt my head a little bit. I was like a little concerned about it. And then the usher's like, "I'll handle this." So he goes back in the movie theater and he like finds Hulk Hogan, who just happens to be watching the movie, and is like, "We have a situation. There's gremlins in the projector room. I need you to yell at them." So Hulk Hogan does his thing. So, would you say, sweetie, that this is like the most 90s?
Okay, so can we talk about the
moment?
90s stuff
Yeah.
then? In
But I think this
conjunction?
is the top one, right?
Yeah.
Top
Yeah.
moment.
Okay.
Hulk Hogan
Yeah.
makes a cameo.
So like, and like we've come so far from that, or Hulk Hogan has come so far, as in like to the bottom. Like, okay, so
Well, and wrestling,
and wrestling in general,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so like I'm there is still like WW.
Well, like
something,
the
right?
Rock has come way out of wrestling and is now like a legit.
Oh yeah, I mean
movie
it's still like a thing. I mean, those guys are. I mean, it was always acting for those guys, but in terms of talking about the 90s and what was like crazy in the 90s, so like in WWF before they had to give up that to the World Wildlife Federation
Foundation.
Foundation. They were WWF, and that was like the greatest thing ever. Hulk Hogan was like the fucking the tits, man. That guy was. Everyone was like, that guy's so cool. He's everywhere. Oh my god.
Yep.
WWF wrestling
Yep.
buddies.
Him and Macho Man.
And now you're like, that is the stupidest shit ever. Like, what were we thinking? But to have like Hulk Hogan in your movie was like, yeah.
Sure.
Like,
It's
what?
pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And then it's like, so Hulk Hogan. I mean, that's like a dumb thing to say, but he like rips off his shirt and he's like, ah, and he's like, hey, Gremlins, don't mess with this. I'm gonna come up there and blah blah blah. And he's like, okay, like, put the movie back on. They're not bothering you again. It was just like, oh god.
Yeah, it was an.
And like the latest we've heard from Hulk Hogan was that he won like billions of dollars from Gawker because like someone like filmed him having sex with like his girlfriend.
What? Ew,
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah.
Good thing.
And then they published, like Gawker published like the video, so Hulk Hogan was able to sue them because it was like,
Not something
that guy
I
needs any
ever
more
wanna
money.
see
But
in my
no,
life.
maybe he does need more money. Did he have a reality show?
Yes, he did. Yep.
Hogan's Heroes.
Hogan knows best. I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
Um,
And his daughter was like,
like,
a singer?
looks like him.
Ugh, poor girl. But is like a singer or something?
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it.
Anyway, but yeah, so that part was like kind of cool and meta, but then also that part I told you, when Phoebe Kate, so the Kate character, starts going on like another little monologue about
Abe Lincoln.
like Abe Lincoln.
Abe
And she's like,
don't talk about Abe Lincoln.
Lincoln. That reminds me of President's Day. I had like this worst thing happen to me on President's Day. And she starts going into this monologue. And in the first one, if you remember, there's this crazy, batshit crazy monologue that she does about why she hates Christmas. It's not really important to know why Kate like hates Christmas. It's a dumb plot point. It doesn't need to be in there. And it was controversial when that movie came out because it kind of dragged everything down because she tells this story about how the reason her dad died was that he like tried to play Santa and like got stuck in the chimney and nobody knew he was in there for like days.
Well, he hit his head and died in.
So he was like dead in the chimney, and that's why she hates Christmas, which is like, yes, I guess
Sure,
I
I
would hate
understand
Christmas too. But it was just like a null plot point. Like it didn't really matter that she like hated Christmas. Anyway, so they like kind of make fun of that by her like trying to say this like, oh, and this is why I don't like President's Day. So trying to like making fun of her why she's a thing of why she hates every holiday.
And Billy's like, oh, I
And
don't
then
really
they-
have time for this.
Yeah, they interrupt her, but I was like, that's
But it was
funny.
like
That's
another
like a poke.
little nod,
Yeah.
and then also in the beginning, Billy tries to tell like the security people about the Gremlins, and then he like starts telling them the rules, and they're like, wait a minute, these rules, like, what about this? What if a gremlin like eats a sandwich before midnight, but gets a piece of food stuck in his teeth that comes out of his teeth after midnight? He didn't really eat it, but it's there. And they're like, what if the gremlin is like eats when he's in a plane and goes over like a time zone and it is midnight? Like, these are all questions that we've been asking for years and years. So they were playing into that for sure in that scene, like making fun of it again. Like, yes, the rules are a little dodgy. We get it. We know. So I enjoyed that. So I think I appreciate that in a sequel of a film that like recognizes that people make fun of it for certain things and then give little nods to that. I appreciate it.
And I felt so cool that we were like in the know now because we've seen the first one. Whereas not only because we were kids and like didn't get anything when we saw this initially, but like now we've seen the original and it kind of gives you like a little bit of like, hey, if you've seen the first
Yeah,
one,
like,
like
we
here's
didn't
a
get
couple
any of
extra
that.
jokes
Yeah.
that like you'll get, which I think is kind of cool.
Pretty
so
cool.
yeah.
Pretty cool. Also, kind of a nod to the first one is that, remember Murray Futterman has that whole thing about like gremlins in like the technology.
Yep.
So the beginning of this movie, the superbuilding has all these kind of like technological flaws. So if you think about it, that's really like Gremlins, like mucking it up. Not the real Gremlins, but like Murray Futterman's idea of like what causes these mishaps in technology. So like the phones are malfunctioning, like the lights flicker on and off, that kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then of course when the actual Gremlins come on, there's like real things that they're like actually taking out the power and stuff like that. So that's like a real Gremlin issue, but I thought that was cool. What else?
Do you want to go more into why it's like classic 90s maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Because I was going to segue into that before, but we just got to talking about meta.
Hulk Hogan, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so like we said, the first one is so steeped in the 80s, which is really fun to watch, you know, from where we're sitting now. The second one, really steeped in the 90s, also really fun to look back and point fingers and make fun of. And we're a little bit more aware of those because we actually lived through them and we're like present. Yes, like we said, Hulk Hogan, like being the coolest shit ever. Not that cool anymore. The Art Deco persists in the 90s, right?
Yeah, it was all about like the minimalism.
Geometric like stuff everywhere, and like this building's trying to be very like techie, so I think they thought that like that was like would scream like technology if everything was like very like triangles and squares and like all that
They like
weird
don't
shit.
let anybody have anything in their office. Like the CEO's office is really just a desk and then like a giant room with nothing in it. Totally 90s. Yeah.
Is Rambo 90s? What was Rambo? 80s? Rambo might be
Maybe,
like 80s.
but I mean there's all those sequels.
Yeah.
So sure.
Which I just found out today that Rambo's name is John Rambo. That's stupid.
You thought his first name was Rambo?
Yes.
Rambo Jones? Like what?
I gotta watch that. That would be fun to do for this podcast, just to be like, what is this?
I don't know.
What was the one? Oh, I don't know if it was that one, but like I watched Parks and Rec recently, and like they didn't have any TV, so like Andy was acting out all his like favorite movies. And I don't think he does Rambo, but he does Roadhouse, and he's like acting out Roadhouse.
Yeah, I've never seen that either. Yeah, be a good one
Those
to
would be
watch.
good.
Yeah.
Frozen yogurt.
Froyo.
So 90s,
Froyo.
right?
Yeah, that was. I mean, it basically
Because that's when that first came out.
Right. and
Wait,
it
is that
was
when
like,
TCBY came out? No, that was earlier.
like that? Like was Haagen-Dazs frozen yogurt?
Ooh,
no, that's ice cream.
But just like the toppings bar was really like revolutionary, I feel
it
like.
was just like frozen yogurt came and people were like, "Oh my god, you guys, we can eat a dessert and it's non-fat. This is amazing." Right. Not realizing that like there's all this sugar in it to make up for the fact that it doesn't have fat. So it was like a huge revolution in the 90s. People were always like, let's go for frozen yogurt. Like not ice cream, but frozen yogurt. Weird.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to TCBY one time with the Contis.
But we didn't have it on the Cape. Remember?
Right.
It was like
and we were
off
like, we were
Cape.
like, whoa. And I remember I got like gummy bears in mine.
Because it was like, because you had Dairy Queen, which was like its own thing. So it's not that we didn't have Dairy Queen. Not that we'd ever not
Dairy
seen
Queen was
soft
ice cream.
serve. It was. So this was, it was the fact that it was yogurt.
I just remember it
and
didn't
it was like
taste
fruity.
I remember I got like vanilla or something, but it didn't taste like anything. Yeah. And I immediately was like, this is a sham.
It was.
I'm never eating it
It basically
again.
was a sham. I mean, let's remember that amazing Seinfeld episode where like there's fat in the frozen yogurt and they're like, this yogurt's so good. And they eat it like every day for weeks and they all gain weight.
Yeah.
So
yep.
good.
Exactly.
Microwaves? Do you feel like
Well,
that's 90s?
microwaves, but I would go a step further and say like microwavable dinners.
Or
so,
or those, or I was going to say those cooking shows that like were like Ron Popeil kind of style.
yes,
Infomercially
there's
kind of
that, but also I think that the microwave show like worked on both those levels where like there was a big move to do like TV dinner type things or like look how easy we can make cooking.
Right.
So they had all those inventions and then they had all these like cookbooks like easy meals, like one zap in the microwave, it's done. So
And now it's like so the opposite. We're all like
Yeah.
farm to table. Like,
Blue Apron.
let's make all this stuff and like cook your own stuff. Like, oh my God, microwaves, like sketch.
I don't even have a microwave, you guys.
I don't either.
Now
I
you
might
don't.
get a toaster oven because I was like, I want to
I
get
just-
a toaster because I'm sick of toasting my shit in the
You get a
oven.
toaster.
But I thought if I could get a toaster oven, then I can use that to heat up stuff. That's the only reason why I miss a
heat up
microwave.
what?
Leftovers.
I think
like
leftovers taste best in the oven though.
But
But like,
some stuff
where's
is
the
hard.
difference with the oven versus a toaster oven?
But like doing like reheating pasta in an oven, that's like not that fun.
I usually do that on the stovetop, like
Yeah.
in a little pan.
Right. So that's what I've
low
been doing.
heat.
So you like it's funny because you really make it work when you don't have a microwave and realize you really don't need one.
Yeah, there's really not so far that I've not had one, which is now almost like 3 years.
Oh, the only thing I will say is defrosting. So I'll get like frozen bread sometimes. I'll be like, shit, I really want that bagel.
You just have to remember to defrost it. So like I have a whole bag of like frozen chicken breasts, and I'll just like take one out the night before and be like, this will be my dinner the next morning. You just have to remember. It's all about remembering. So
right, no, but like I just bought. This is the dumbest story.
No last second defrosting.
Yeah, but this is the dumbest story. But like my gluten-free bagels are frozen at the grocery store, and I went specifically to get bagels because I was craving a bagel, and I'm like, fuck, this shit is frozen. And I'm not going to be able to eat this bagel right now, and I'm mad.
You can still put it in the oven when it's frozen. I've done
well,
that
you know what?
before.
I just left it out on the counter right here, and it defrosted within like 30 minutes.
Because your apartment's so hot.
Maybe.
We picked another hot nut to do a podcast. That's for sure.
Anyway, good story.
So,
you don't need
microwaves, good times. Any other 90s tropes?
Smoking
inside. Yeah. Which... there was only one character that did this, and it was Marla, who has this like terrible Long Island kind of like accent. She switches it up like throughout,
so bad.
So it's like the worst accent you've ever heard. Like I can't even.
Billy.
Yeah, like this isn't working for me.
This isn't working.
And like
for me.
it's just not good.
Oh, hi.
But she smokes.
Oh, hi.
She smokes, and then there's another part where someone's taking an unauthorized break and is smoking. Which I'm like, if you're gonna like just smoke in your workplace, like you can smoke inside, obviously. Why are you risking like getting fired? So there was that. But yeah, smoking definitely. Even though it was like kind of on the outs in the 90s, but this is early 90s, so still really 80s when you think about it.
Wait, so we're 27 years from when this movie was? Yeah. Wait, how old am I? Yeah.
I don't do math.
So 27 years ago. That makes sense. Okay. That like you could still smoke inside. I'm just trying like I don't know I'm sure we've said this a lot in all the 90s movies that we've covered, but like the 90s don't seem that far away to me, even though they totally were. Because when you're like shit, 27 years, that's like a lifetime.
Yeah,
that we've lived. I mean, you're like barely over 27 years. But doesn't it in the 90s like not seem that far away?
No, it's sad.
It's really weird.
Sad
but that was like a while.
Yeah.
Anyways, very cool. And I think mostly for this movie, it's like the cast is like kind of crazy. Like they talk about all the people who are in this, right? So not only do you have the originals, so you have the Billy guy who he does a lot of horror movies. I think he's not a super well known actor now, but like really known for these movies in the general, like more like I don't even know what I'm talking about. Phoebe Cates, we've already talked about many times. Love that bitch. Doesn't do anything anymore. Married to Kevin Kline. Rock on. So cool.
I still can't believe it.
That guy who plays Mr. Clamp, really funny. I know he's supposed to be like, I guess people are like, oh, he's supposed to be like a Donald Trump kind of figure. But he's really likable, and I like him.
Super nice and like I kind of resent that comparison because they have a scene where like they show him like not knowing what to do because he's really just a figurehead, but he really like takes this situation like by storm and turns it around and is like, I can help people.
He's awesome
and he's nice. He like knows, he meets Billy, remembers his name, like knows exactly who he is, likes his drawings. Like he's like the anti Donald Trump. So I resent that.
He's super likable CEO. I feel like that really like turned it on its head what that character was like.
And I was trying to remember Donald Trump in the 90s, which I'm sure wasn't as terrible as he is now because he didn't have his TV shows yet.
Right.
So like remember he was in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Another sequel. Like he didn't seem like a bad guy there. Like he was just a guy that had a lot of money. So maybe, but I mean now certainly not. Certainly not.
No, but I love that guy. And that actor is fucking hilarious. And he is like a real gem in this for sure. As we talked about, Christopher Lee, very cool little part for him. John Astin, who was the original Gomez, has this like tiny little bit part as the janitor. Very cool. Who else? That guy. Okay, so this is a Joe Dante movie. So like a lot of actors that have been in either obviously the Gremlins or we had done Inner Space. So that was his movie as well. A lot of the same actors in that. And it's the actor who plays the cowboy is in this. Very cool.
So you say he's in all of his movies? Because Dick Miller's in like all of his movies.
Well, he was in Inner Space. I don't know if he was in The Burbs. I don't think he was in the first one.
Because the thing about Dick Miller is that he makes a cameo in like every
Who's Dick Miller?
Murray Futterman.
Oh,
he makes a cameo in like all of his movies, so it's always like a thing to be like, "Where's Murray Futterman?"
Yeah,
so it's pretty great.
Which I like is awesome. that guy who plays the cop, but I was like, oh, he's that SCTV guy, and he kind of passed away recently.
Little
but,
Monsters.
Yeah, he's the
He was
bad
in
guy in
something
Little
else we
Monsters.
watched, too.
And then randomly we found all these other.
Spaceball. He was in Spaceballs too.
Spaceballs.
As one of the guards.
Yep, really cool. So randomly we found. Okay, so the real like random surprise one for us was like the postal delivery guy who is like humming the Mogwai little tune. Lullaby, Gizmo's lullaby that like makes Billy be like, oh my god, why are you like, where'd you hear that? I'm looking at it, I'm like, sweetie, is that first of all I go, is that Chuco? She looks at me like I have like 8 heads. I'm like, no, like Chuco from Breaking Bad. And she's like, you mean Tuco? First of all, I did not finish Breaking Bad. I watched many seasons.
That you remembered that, but I guess
I watched the Tuco
right.
seasons.
So I guess that was like the only villain that you remember.
Yeah.
But like, so he was like the first like big scary villain in that show that like they started working with. But then you're like, he's fucking nuts, and they like had to get rid of him. So it was that guy, and I was like,
Yes.
is it? I don't know. So then Sweetie looked it up, and it was him.
so good.
Props
like
to you.
little tiny baby, but awesome. He
And
was
like
really good.
normal and like not
Yeah.
span. Like it was just funny. He was like total like valley guy. In New York
It was
City.
good,
It was
good.
weird, but it was funny.
And then come to find out, as I'm like scanning the credits, Hank is also in it as a SWAT guy.
Which we missed because we weren't paying attention at that scene. Damn
So
it.
it might have been like a
So that was crazy.
real bit
And
part.
we didn't talk about this in the first podcast that we did Gremlins on, but in that one, Mike Ehrmantraut is one of the cops in Gremlins. So it's like a lot of Breaking Bad levels here. It's freaking me out. It's
So
freaking
that
me
was,
out.
like, kind of crazy. And in terms of Large Marge alums, this is like, oh my god, every character has been in a movie we've covered. It was nuts. We're like, it's
We,
that
like,
guy. It's
can't
that
even
guy.
write it down.
It's
Yeah.
like the guy from Mrs. Doubtfire who Daniel meets like the old man who owns the television studio. Like he was like Uncle Fred, the Dracula guy. It was just like all these people, and it was just it got nutty. It got crazy.
16 Candles, the
Yes.
girlfriend, the blonde girlfriend in that is Marla.
Yep.
And
Long
Duck
Dong.
Dong is the guy, the
Also
Japanese
playing a
tourist
stereotype, very sad.
that is touring the building and then like has a camera with him. Yes, stereotype.
Yes.
Yeah, that guy just can't shake it. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was a nod to that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I thought that. I mean, the Marla thing really blew my mind because I kind of recognized her, but not, and it was just very shocking. to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she's like, wow, that hair is red. She's like very, very red.
But I always hated her like so much
Oh,
when I was
yeah.
little. I was like, this bitch.
She's funny though.
So, and anyone else alums? Oh, the microwave Marge or whatever she's been in a few things. So she was in Inner Space. She was in Inner Space too. That was the one I was talking about.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
the dream, the grocery store, the woman with the little gun. That's her, and then she's also the teacher in Hocus Pocus. So yeah, another
Yes.
Inner Space Joe Dante alum. I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay.
So quickly, my 2 scary scenes specifically when I was little. So number 1 is when Kate is in the elevator and the Gremlins have kind of taken it over and they're like going down, and then they like punch holes through the side and their scary gremlin hands come out and like grab her feet and she falls. And so I don't know if anyone, I'm sure everybody has seen the movie Speed. But there's that scene in the beginning with an elevator that's very traumatic. And like, I think I've only seen it one time. Like I've seen Speed a lot, but I've only ever seen the beginning part like one time.
True.
And it was so scarring. And it's just like really,
You
even,
think of it every time you get into an elevator?
well, so I don't want to brag, but I might have like the sketchiest elevator on the planet in my apartment building. And like every time I get in it, I'm like, this could be the end. I don't know. It could be it. But yeah, that. So this scene, the gremlin, I think it's the googly-eyed gremlin again, or one of his offspring, is like toying with the controls and the electricity and makes the entire elevator plummet down to the ground. And Kate miraculously survives because she's like holding on to that bar that you can hold on to, and then like kind of falls, but
Right.
not really. But all the gremlins die, but she's fine. But whenever I'm in an elevator, I'm like, what did Phoebe Cates do again that like helped her survive? And like I think of that scene, but it's like so scary, right? That scene is very scary.
And this whole movie, the way they do it is that because the gremlins are like funny and do those little funny voices and also like are making cracks every time they're like terrorizing people, it really like kind of like puts a buffer to what is actually really happening and the scary and creepiness of it. which is pretty kind of cool. So it's like a really nice mix of like, okay, this is like terrifying and scary, but they're making like jokes and being kooky. So it's like kind of takes it like
takes the edge off.
Yeah.
It's like a glass of wine during a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then the second one is the spider scene. So I obviously had a huge fear of spiders when I was little. If I saw a spider in my room, I would like have a super meltdown. Remember, I would just like lose it, and then Dad would always come in and be like, "I'll kill it," but then no. This is when we were little, so like you didn't do it. Dad always killed the spiders.
I did,
but he was terrible at it, and would take like a magazine rolled up and then like tap the spider, and then it would fall to the ground and crawl away. And I get so mad every time. I'd be like, "No, don't kill like that." So, so I hated spiders. So this scene, the beginning scene, is in the lab, whatever, and you see like this giant gross spider, which was scary to me as a child, but now looking at it, I'm like, that is stupid. It looks nothing like a spider. The gremlin drinks the spider juice and turns into this giant kind of Black Widow-esque body like spider. So like with the big like bulbous like black body and then like the big legs that stick out.
It kind of just looks like a gremlin like sitting on a spider though.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and it's not scary to me now, but when I was little, this was terrifying.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
So I mean, what scared me the most is that Marlo was stuck in this giant spider web, and then the spider comes down the hallway and like comes towards them, and then the camera pans to like its underside, and you see all those like gross like like things. I hate those things.
Oh my god! I just thought, are we gonna do arachnophobia?
Probably. And I'll cry the whole time. But
man, that movie's so good.
Oh man. But yeah, that scene really spooked me. And then actually, you know, in the Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King, there's like a similar scene where they're stuck in the big spider web, and then the big spider comes. Yeah. I totally had Gremlins 2 flashbacks like during that scene. So it's like this is just
Peter
like when
Jackson
Marla got stuck in the web. Oh man,
those are good.
Yeah, but those are my scary scenes.
Okay.
So
I have two too. Well, ones that are like kind of memorable to me. Let's say. So one for me was that paper shredder scene. Ugh. Yeah. So the weird thing about Gremlins is that when they die, it's like this gross like pea soup puree because they don't bleed. Their blood is like green, right? So it's just like green gush. So like at one point, like Kate bites one of them, remember? And she like gets like green like slime on her face, and you're just like, ew! Like that just seems even like worse than blood. It's like, ugh! It's just this like slimy blood concoction. Yeah. So anyway, so they are. One of them is up in Mr. Clamp's office, and it's kind of hilarious. But they put a mousetrap in the secretary's sandwich. And she bites it. You don't even know where she goes. Like you hear it snap, and then she gone.
Screams,
and then
gone.
Yeah, and then there's a gremlin with her sweater like draped over his shoulders, like a secretary, and he's like, la la la, and he's like, what is he saying when he types? He's like
saying the letters.
Yeah,
I think
he's like, I don't know. Yeah, so he's like
and then
typing.
He sees the coffee pot, and he's like, coffee.
Yeah,
and then like
chucks it at Mr. Clamp. So Mr. Clamp is like, what the fuck is this? Like totally like. Not know what's going on, but like kind of like holds his own. Good for him.
Like Billy's mom.
Yeah. Good call. So like they get into this like fight, and then the gremlins always punch people, which I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, why are they just biting or scratching people? Seems like a weird reflex for those things to be punching people. Just saying, because also they have like tiny little fists.
Punch people in the first one, right?
No, I don't think so. So I'm like, that's weird. Anyway, so they like there's a paper shredder because Mr. Clamp secretary had just been like shredding a bunch of his mail. So that's like how you kind of know about it, and like you instantly see that on the desk because they had talked about it like the scene before. So, like, Mr. Clamp gets the gremlin over by that, and his like foot gets caught in, and he starts getting like shredded. So he's like getting eaten by the paper shredder, and it's just like this green goo, and like he's holding on to Mr. Clamp's tie, and he's like trying to drag him into it. And he's like, let go of my tie, but he ends up just getting eaten up to the point, you know, that he can't drag him in anymore. But it's just this green, disgusting nastiness. Puddle, and it's covered. He's all covered in it, and it's so gross.
Well, it's just like the gremlin has bones and stuff, so like just the fact that it like goes through that and like doesn't break the shredder is very impressive. Yeah. First of all, but second of all, it just seems like so. It's like
something about being shredded is obviously like.
Well, that's disgusting. Ugh. But it reminds me of Temple of Doom when the guy goes under that like rock crusher thing.
Yep.
The same thing where like his body does something where you're like, that looks really gross. And it was the same thing here.
Or in Raiders of the Lost Ark where it's like the propeller thing. or like if you're seeing Fargo, like the wood chipping shit. Like,
Well, that was a dead.
That's
He was
gross.
dead when he was
But
in the wood
still,
chipper.
like,
But
ew.
yeah. But yeah. that scene.
But good scene. And then the one I kind of like re-realized today, because I'm pretty sure it's the only death in this one, is when Christopher Lee, the scientist, like gets electrocuted and dies in the lab.
I mean, do we know for sure he
Well,
died?
okay, and this is the same thing with the first one, because remember, they're like, you don't know if anyone dies. Remember when the teacher dies and you're like, did the teacher really die?
Well,
like,
yeah, and
nobody knows.
we're pretty sure. Definitely only the old lady in the chair died, but we don't really know about anybody else. But yeah, it's the same thing here. Where like they don't really go so far as to like show you a dead body. It's just like implied.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, he could have.
But really, all the other gremlins just like scratched people and like kind of bit them or whatever, or like punched them out. Like,
And most people seem to have gotten out of the building too. Like the Marge, the microwave lady, she got out. Like most people got out. I don't know why Marlo was still in the building, like smoking and doing work.
Yeah.
But she was still in the building for some reason.
Because I feel like as this being as scary as you want it to be, or like a horror movie or whatever, but really the thing with Gremlins and what I thought like the first one really put is that they're more of like a nuisance. You know, like that whole kind of theory about, oh, like he starts that being like, oh, there's a gremlin in the engine of this car and I won't start.
Yep.
So that's kind of like where that whole theory started, right? That's just like a pain in the butt. They weren't really like killing people. And because it obviously makes it like slightly less serious. But in the first one, they did just seem to cause quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
Pretty sure the teacher died.
Pretty sure.
We're
Like 80% sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so those are my like two big ones.
Okay.
Super fun.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Yeah, fun to watch. But yeah, I'm really glad at this point we've seen the first one and have been able to use that as sort of a
And have been
Jumping
able
off
to
point.
understand that it's a better movie.
Yes.
Like, and I know that like we often say like we think the sequel's better, but like in this case we just hadn't really
But
seen the first one,
and it's
like
not
I
like our
understand-
podcast is about determining like what's the better
no,
movie
no,
at all.
no. I just
Like,
mean
we're
like
not.
for our own sanity.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I mean these movies have two very different tones. First of all, it's like the first one is definitely darker,
Right.
And the first one definitely plays into Joe Dante's like horror side. And he has a horror comedy background. Like all of his movies have like at least a little bit, if not a lot, of comedy in them.
Right.
But they're primarily horror movies.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing that like John Landis does, where like it's mixed in together, but there's usually like such a good balance that it works out. But the that's wow. And then I was just thinking that in The Howling, the cowboy from Inner Space has like a big part in that too that I didn't realize.
Wait, is that Joe
And I was-
Dante?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So there's that, but then the second one really goes on to into the comedy
Right,
side,
right.
less horror, more comedy. Because I do again think that this was like a movie for the kids.
Right.
It's like Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks.
Yeah.
Like they were playing up to that with the kids. So
Oh,
that's
totally.
why we had such a fondness for it. We understand. Yes, the first one was better. I will still always have like a weird soft spot in my heart for this movie. But yes, I'm aware. I'm aware of everything.
Yeah, and it's not like like I was saying, like we're not here to just because this is the whole interesting thing, right? Watching this like a little bit later in your life and trying to decide, like, okay, like, is this like, did we just like this because we were a kid and these things are like crack to children, and like that's like kind of like what gets applied here, but still interesting. Still like the Gremlins franchise. Rumored a third one in the mix. I just read a little interview with Christopher Columbus, who did the script for the third one.
I'm sorry. Is it Christopher? I think it's just Chris Columbus.
Oh,
Because you
Chris
wanted to
Columbus.
differentiate
True.
him
Sorry.
from the Christopher
the Explorer.
Columbus.
Ooh.
Okay.
Well, how did I say that? Why did I do that? Oh God. I'm sorry, Chris. C squared. So I just read this like thing about how he just wrote the script for the third one. It's gonna go back to the dark stuff. Hopefully, I guess depend who like directs it, but and like they're gonna explore some more. I don't know what other like themes you need to explore in the Gremlins universe, but interesting concept. Those little
Gizmo.
but good. Another like fun sequel, super entertaining. Laughed a lot.
Lots of laughs.
Lots of laughs. Always lots of laughs. And Large Marge Santa's here.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying our sequel September. Up next is... We don't know. We'll have to check the books. I thought you knew. I thought you had it.
No,
thought you had
I listed
it in
like
your
a
head.
bunch, and now I'm not remembering because we're trying to do them in the order that we actually watched the original.
But not all of the sequels ever. We're gonna save some sequels
because I
for later.
threw out "Honey, I Blew Up the Baby," and Audrey was like, "No,
Fuck that movie.
We're
I've
not
seen it
doing
like
that.
one time when I was like
that did not
14
shape our
and
childhood."
it sucked. Yeah,
I will tell you that. And
Fuck
then I
it.
threw out
Fuck
another
it.
one too, and you're like, "No."
Adam's Family Values or no?
I think that actually might be the next one.
Well, I wasn't sure if we wanted to save Adam's Family Values for October,
right.
so I
That's
wasn't
what we
sure.
talked about.
If,
Yeah.
but we'll see. We'll talk about it.
Don't worry, guys.
We'll announce it on Twitter.
There's
and,
plenty more.
and you can follow us on Twitter at the Sweetie Club to find out more information and just to talk to us because we love chatting on the
We
Twitter.
get back to you like immediately.
Immediately. It's unbelievable, you guys. Also,
We don't have people working for us. It's like actually
it's
us.
just it's me. And
Hey.
then
Oh,
sometimes
I have my own handle.
Yeah, that you chime in on. So if you're lucky,
I always chime in.
if you're lucky, you'll get a reply from EK Dumas19
whoop whoop
at Sweetie. EK Dumas19.
Yeah,
Not at Sweetie. Sorry, it's confusing.
sweetiegmail.com.
Anyways, and then also follow us on Instagram at Large Marge Sent Us. So keep a lookout for cool posts on Gremlins 2 on that account. Okay, thanks for listening. Love you. Bye. Bye. Mugwag is small.